using a library on the library website.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So we have been going through questions. One of the questions that came was last 3 ayah of Surah Al-Baqarah, specifically the verse that talks about Sami'na wa ata'na, which means we heard and we obeyed. This would be, inshallah, today's topic. We have many more questions. Again, if you have any questions that in general that you would like to be covered, we can discuss it here. There are a lot of interesting questions here. If you would like me to edit now, I can edit now. If not, we have this anonymous Google Docs. If you would like to add questions there, I'm regularly checking it and picking it up some questions to put it here. Of course, there are questions which are which would be interesting to discuss, but to say the least, but students are being a little reluctant to ask it in such an environment. I think we should be open to even discussing such questions. So just feel free to ask them. I'll be more than happy to pick up on those topics, because our general understanding of religion shouldn't be like it is this archaic, outdated thingy which needs to be part of our life just because we are born in such an environment, fortunately or unfortunately, and then we are trying to live with it. This shouldn't be really the point of religion, because religion should be, I believe, purpose of my life in the sense of why am I here? And this is where I would find answers for, not in the sense of like there are different flavors of saying, oh, religion is purpose of our life, more like a militarist way of speaking. That's not my point. But inshallah, let's be open to that. And that question is one of them, actually. There's this verse in Surah Al-Baqarah. At the very end of Surah Al-Baqarah, we have this phrase, Sami'na wa ata'na, which generally is translated as we heard and we obeyed. So I would like to have a discussion about that. But before I start having the conversation, I would like to take your opinion about how you feel about somebody giving you a command and you are saying that we heard and we obeyed. I mean, in general, because you are born and raised in the society, how does you must obey sound like to you? Be honest. I mean, it's not like we are not going to stone any of you to death because of your unorthodox thought here. We are trying to understand really, because Quran has such a verse in there, and I feel like this is not in conformity with the norms of today's society. So we will try to understand what that means and whether that norms of society, maybe they're right, maybe wrong, but let's try to understand that together. And for that, I need your honest feedback, how you feel about obeying a command. Yes.
I think it depends on the source of the command, because if that person doesn't have, like if you don't respect the person, why would you obey them? And then the second part of that is depending on what they're saying. Is it aligned with what you think is right, or do you understand at least where they're coming from?
I see. So multiple things you said, actually. First, who is giving the command? Second is what type of a command is that, right? So then that means you will evaluate the command. Like if I tell you to like kill Peter Parker here, so you would say how, like what the heck you are talking about, right? So first, who am I to give such a command? Second, what sort of a nonsensical command is that, right? So these are multiple things that you take into account. How do you feel about that verse in general, or anything? Like, again, let's try to make it interactive, at least at the beginning. Like once I start talking, I will keep talking. But what is your take? Like, or let me put it this way. Have you found yourself in the position of asking a question to your local imam or anybody religious, and then they said, we hear and we obey? Like you ask the question and this is the response you get. How would you feel about it? Like, let's say you said, I don't know, let's pick a hot topic. Well, in Islam, man takes two, woman takes one. Oh, my local imam, what do you think about this? I'm just throwing an example. And your imam said that we hear and we obey. How would you feel about that answer? Yes.
In general, obeying a command also means understanding why it's a command and it's there in the first place. So like an example you used, I feel like if you just say hear and obey, it doesn't really make sense and doesn't really allude to why that's a command in the first place, and therefore no one's gonna really fully like obey that because they don't understand why it's there in the first place.
Okay, so here, maybe not necessarily here is what I'm hearing from you. Because actually that word sami'na is translated in multiple ways. One of them is hearing, the other one is listening. Right? And it makes a big difference. To say that we heard and we obeyed versus we listened and we obeyed makes a big difference, right? If I say, did you hear the sound? You heard something, right? And you might be hearing me uttering some sound out of my mouth as well. This is just hearing, background noise. You listen, you hear background noise as well. Yes.
So can you just elaborate like the Arabic for it? Is it we hear and we obey, or is it we heard and we obey?
So here it is in the past. So sami'na, so we heard, but it could be understood as simply hearing. It could also be understood we listened. And I'm going to give an example for that as well.
But like if it's just here, then I think I would have a problem. Like you just hear something and then you just obey. That would, I think, be a problem. But if you heard, like for heard, you analyze something and then you came to a conclusion and then you obeyed it.
Okay.
But if it's just like hear and obey, then
I see. Yes. So we were talking about we heard and we obeyed, and we were questioning how would you respond when actually you even mentioned that. So Dua was mentioning one such example. So going to a imam and you ask a question and imam says we hear and we obey, no question. How would you feel about such a case as what we were discussing? How would you feel about it?
I think it's important to define what hearing means in this case. So if you're hearing like a king, for example, you don't have to obey because, the king is a human like you. So you're like, okay, whatever. But hearing God, it's different, and I think I've been watching a lot of TikTok videos in which non-Muslim people are, like reading Quran for the first time, or even non-Muslim people who don't know what the Quran is, they're hearing the Quran recitation for the first time and it brings tears to their eyes. And a lot of people are saying, like the soul recognizes its creator. So I think that has a role to play. It's not just hearing like a word of anyone, it's hearing the word of God and recognizing, and your soul recognizes that it is the word of God. So then at that point, what option do you have other than to obey?
Okay. But in this case, I guess this would also make us question, who is my creator? Because it really, the effect of that word on me really depends on what I understand from my creator. Because generally, when the topic is about obeying, what comes to mind is an army, right? In an army, commander gives a command, and you obey to that command, right? Who the heck are you to question? Yeah.
But under international law, they can disobey if it violates international law.
Even in this case, right? So those, if an army officer comes and says, kill Peter Parker, the innocent person here, they should not obey in this case even, right? That's right. But this is the idea, right? The command is coming from a authority of the army. But in this case, if you are like, if we pick a random one of you, put it into army, and commander comes and says, do this. versus there's another soldier next to you who is a soldier for 40 years and who very well know what a commander means. What would be the effect of the same command on both of you? I mean, you don't know really the discipline of army or anything of that sort. Actually, my uncle went to army when he was at around age 30. In Turkey, normally you go to army when you're 18. So he was the one who kept delaying, and he went there for only 28 days by pay money. So normally it's for almost 2 years. So anyways, he goes there and the commander is teaching something. And then he raises his hand and argues against the commander, like as if thinking that he's in the classroom because he was a teacher back then. And then he says, for the rest of my stay during the army, he kept just poking with me, just making me, I don't know, all sorts of torture he can do to him. Just, who are you talking to? Are you aware? So within the army mindset, for example, you get to know who the commander is to really obey the commander. You cannot simply just say that, well, my God, but what do you understand from your commander, your God, right? So this expectation of, in generally, taking such a verse as an excuse for not to understand or not even to question sounds a little problematic to me. Saying that there's something in there. No, we don't question anything, we just obey. Why is that problematic? Because we are talking about the Creator who is giving me this thing over my shoulders, which keeps torturing me by asking tons of questions, right? Like animals doesn't have such problems. Like humans, we are having all sorts of questions. Something that seems unjust to us bothers us. And we ask the question, why? The why question is, human is asking that question, like it or not. And my Creator gave me all those questions. If the same Creator tells me that don't ask questions, what would you say about this? Wouldn't you say that, well, you put me in this condition in the first place, you give me all those questions, and now you're asking me not to ask questions? Yes.
I don't think this is about God asking people not to ask questions. I think this is more about the attitude of the believer. Because I think this verse is about believers, like believers said, we heard and we obeyed. And I think it's about how much trust you have in Allah for you to be like, I heard and I obeyed. Because for me, it's like, like, yeah, some things are banned, like drinking, for example, or whatever. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand why it's bad or it's banned. But in my life, also through the mercy of Allah, through, doing things that He has forbidden me to do and getting hurt by it, I have verified that, like, He's right, and He cares about me and He's merciful. So now, even when it comes to the things that I don't understand, I have that sort of verification or that trust that, if He's saying it, I'm hearing it, and I should obey because He is right, and I know that. So I think it's sort of like, it's reminding me of how, like, like how if you heard your mother say something, your mother would just be like, no, just trust me, it's fine. Like, I'm older than you, just, and you're at that point where you're like, what, she's always done good by me and whatever. So I should trust her because I don't have that same level of, no, I'm not talking about like if she's telling you to get married to someone, like, just disclaimer. But if you're like a kid, like young child, yeah, so I think it's more about like the attitude of the believer and their trust towards Allah rather than Allah being like, oh, don't question.
Actually, let's then study the verse and see in which context Sami'na wa ata'na is coming. We heard and we obeyed is coming. Okay. So, آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون. The messenger believed in that which has been revealed unto him from his Lord, and so do believers. Which is interesting. Prophet is revealed the message, and the verse is starting that Prophet believed in the message that was sent to him in the first place. What does that mean? How dare? Does he have the option not to? Apparently it was. Prophet had the option to reject the message that came to him. What does that mean? Message comes to you, you evaluate the message, and Iman, as we have been saying in this discussion for so long, Iman, it would be a super injustice to translate it as simply belief or faith. the word iman in Arabic, the way Quran presents it to us, is being secure and sure about something. Iman involves yaqeen, certainty. So when it says prophets believed in something, it's not a jump of, what do they say? Leap of faith. It's a conviction. Message comes to you. Let's say I say, there's an army behind this mountain. Believing in this, like if you use it in English, we would say, well, I believe you, you're a good guy. So if you say so, it must be so. But are you certain about it? I mean, if you are so sure and secure about my words, that could become a certainty for you. But for you to bear witness to an army being behind this mountain, you would either listen and see if there are like sounds coming, or you would just climb over it and see if there's any dust over there. Like there needs to be some sort of a sign that an army is coming. Then you would say, yeah, I am sure an army is coming, right? So Prophet had a message, but in the first place, he himself, the verse is saying, he himself was sure about his message. And then says, so do the believers, which means, it is a question to all of us, am I convinced about the message that which comes with the messenger? Because it follows up with that. Go ahead.
So can we make a distinction about the iman of the prophet and the iman of the believer? Because
In what sense?
for us it feels like from this ayat, like for us it's iman bil ghaib,
Okay.
but for the prophet it has been revealed unto him from his Lord. So this feels like, for me it feels like for the prophet the iman is different as compared to like for us believers. Like for us the conviction is of ghaib, like it has not been revealed to me or anything like that.
It is revealed to you. Actually, definitely there's a level of perfectness, but the same message that was revealed to the messenger is right in front of you. It is the same message. And your conviction, Prophet's conviction was to the ghaib, your conviction would still be to the ghaib. So in this sense, the nature of that faith, of that iman, is no different. But the level of it definitely differs. Because in your own life, you do experience different levels of certainty about existence of creator, existence of an afterlife, of any of these stuff, right? Or even in the case of prophets, like what is? One item of belief is what? Belief in the prophets, right? Prophet himself, like, let's move on with the verses, very interesting. كُلٌّ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَكُتُبِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ. Prophet believed in prophethood himself. What does that mean? Like he himself is a prophet, and he is being convinced that prophethood must exist. Because still, belief in prophets is belief in ghaib. No, I mean, it's just a human being right there, is it? Because a human being is not ghaib. You see the person, right? So belief in the unseen means you are arriving to a conclusion about something beyond this existence, which is a very interesting topic in and of itself, but definitely in its nature, prophet's belief versus your belief is of the same nature. But to what extent am I taking lessons from that? Otherwise, if this was not the case, how would prophet be a teacher to you? He would say that, oh, he's different, right? You can never take him as an example, and you would have a valid excuse for that. You would say that, oh, of course he would, because he saw and whatever, but I don't, so I can't be like him, right? And what's the point of sending a human messenger to humans? Just send a robot messenger, an angel messenger, right? Not a human messenger. So in this case, and this verse is putting us together with the prophet, saying that prophet believed in them just as you do. Okay, so we are at the same level, which when I first realized this was such an eye-opener for me, because this is really waking me up from a false idea that prophet was challenged like me by whispers of Satan. Anything I'm going through in life, prophet must have gone through that in his life as well. And when you look at it, they do. Like prophets went through things, but they made good choices. I mess up with bad choices. This is our distinction. And still, I am open to make right choices as well. This is why the prophet is there. This is why the message is there, right? So prophets come with message, and believers and prophets themselves make iman, meaning become convinced and confirm this message. So the messenger believed in that which has been, and again, the word believe in here, read it as iman, not the English word believe, but being sure and secure in that which has been revealed unto him from his Lord, and so do believers. Each one believed in Allah and his angels and his scriptures and his messengers. لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله. We make no distinction between any of his messengers, which is again another very interesting verse. We make no distinction between his messengers. What does that mean? Belief in prophethood means, and question yourselves for that, do you feel the need for a human teacher for your guidance? Ask yourself. I mean, for a second, put your idea of Prophet Muhammad aside for a second and think for yourself. Do I really need a human teacher to find truth? In general, a human teacher. If you take Intro to Philosophy 101 or something, I don't know if Brother Atik is here. He used to say that the discussion started making more sense after attending Intro to Philosophy or whatever. He made a philosophy minor here when he was a student. Once you get exposed to such questions within the society that you live in, you really say, well, I can find truth. Or even nowadays, ChatGPT will find truth and tell it to me. Like, we don't need a human guide. We need an AI guide nowadays, right? A human teacher. Do you really need a human teacher for finding guidance? This is what belief in prophethood means. Are you convinced that my creator will send me guides, human guides, which are going to be living the pains and happinesses that I live in this life, and they will navigate through those sadnesses and happinesses in a proper way, and will be a apparent example to my face how to navigate, how to practice. Because I was teaching that course, and students are having, I'm exposing them a lot to theory, but I felt like they're not having enough experience with what I'm showing them. And once the class finishes, after the final exam, they forget everything. So I have to walk them through certain examples, certain practices. So in my life, how to handle success, how to handle failure, how to handle death of your child. Many things, right? You're going through everything in life. Prophets went through many things in life. If you read Quran with that lens, all those prophetic examples, they're all over the place. There had been a king prophet. There had been a shepherd prophet. There had been a prophet who had been very rich. There had been a prophet who lost all his wealth. Everything in between, you will see their examples. And nowadays, even today, you will need to have humans, not as prophets, but as Prophet himself says, Ulama'u ummati ka'anbiya'i bani Israel. He says, the scholars of my nation is like the prophets of Bani Israel, the children of Yaqub alayhi salam. So there are going to be humans that which you will look at their lives and get lessons out of that, because they are students of the prophet. You will need to have somebody and see, let me see how this guy is preaching the message, but let me see, how does this message really play in life? Maybe I am preaching you super pious stuff, but does it show in my life? If it does not, you would say that, well, he just talks, and you shouldn't pay attention, really. So human is in need of human teacher to see how it really appears in human life, because I'm going to take it for my life, not only for my intellectual stuff. After all these comes, وَقَالُوا سَمِعْنَا وَأَطَعْنَا غُفْرَانَكَ رَبَّنَا وَإِلَيْكَ الْمَصِيرُ, and they say, we hear and we obey. After Iman, that security is established, they say, we hear and we obey. So taking this verse out of that context, not establishing this security and surety part, if we just say, we hear and we obey, then it's being a super disservice to human being. To the extent that I am sure and secure, I will obey. If I have a very faint security or conviction, I will obey that much. Like, and this guy, I look at his clothing, he seems to be a Muslim, and I have a certain trust in Muslims, let's say, and he says me something, let's say, I lost my wallet and I need to go somewhere. Could you lend me $5? I mean, I can lend him $5 because I have that much of trust in an average Muslim, let's say, because I know that that clothing is not asking $5 for drug. But if he says, well, could you lend me $2,000? I'm not that sure about the guy because I don't know him that much. So my security in him is not that much to lend him $2,000. Makes sense? So, سمعنا وأطعنا, we heard and we obeyed, is becoming meaningful as much as I am convinced. So, if I am less convinced, then somebody coming up and saying that, oh, you have to obey because God commands you so, how much of a conviction do I have about who God is, right? This is why it would be a super disservice to address someone with whatever question they come. If I just say, we hear and we obey, period, Quran says so, I don't think this is what that verse is saying. And to help you with that, from Surah Al-Furqan, this is أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ. So the surah starts, goes with a few more verses before that, but I wanted to keep it a little shorter. أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ أَفَأَنْتَ تَكُونَ عَلَيْهِ وَكِيلًا. Have you seen him who chose for his God his own desires? Would you then be guardian over him? أَمْ تَحْسَبُ أَنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ يَسْمَعُونَ أَوْ يَعْقِلُونَ. Or do you think that most of them listen or understand? إِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ سَبِيلًا. They are only like cattle. No, they are even worse astray in path. This verse has the same word, سمعنا. So it says, أكثرهم يسمعون أو يعقلون. So in this context, let me take you a little back to that surah. This is, if you take it within its historical context, it sounds it's talking about the people of Mecca, and they come and argue against Messenger. And Messenger is trying to deliver them a message. And here in the verse number 43, the Creator is saying that, have you seen those who take their desires as their God? First of all, what does that mean? Taking your desire as your God? Yes.
For example, at Hazrat Yusuf's time, they wanted to like shower their idols with money. So it's like you want money, and then your gods also want money. So you expect your God to have the same desires as you.
Okay. How about your time?
It's when, like, for example, like you said, we accredit the soda or the company for the soda. That's an example of crediting someone as the person that provides you it instead of God himself.
Mm-hmm. So for God, you said provider, right? So in the, by what you are saying is, what my understanding of God is my provider. And in this case, at least the verse as it's putting, those that take their desires as their provider. Anybody in here, do you guys ever take your desires as your provider? No?
Actually,
You're-
I guess I read it differently because that to me would have been like, have you seen him who chose as his God his own desires?
Okay.
But it's, have you seen him who chose for his God his own desires? So I'm thinking of it like you expect your God to have the same desires as.
I think that would be okay if you'd understand it the first way. Ilahahu hawahu. Yes.
I thought of it as like, if Allah orders you to do something and you decide, no, I'm not gonna obey that, I'm gonna do this, then you're following your own desires, so you're taking that as like your own God.
Okay. And your desire says, what's it? Buy this purse, let's say. Okay. And your Creator says, no, do not waste. Like God says in Quran, do not waste, but you already have 10 purses. And now you have this 11th purse, which is shining in the shelf. And for boys, it is more like watching another movie or whatever. Okay. So that brother was a brother. I don't know if he's here. a brother was watching cricket until 7 a.m. Last week. Let's say you have this desire to watch cricket for the national whatever. I guess you guys had a match. It's I think Saturday. Okay. So you have this desire to watch a certain thing. What does it mean that you take it as your God? I am expecting that thing to satisfy me. Okay, because the purse in there is saying that come and buy me and you're going to be happy. It's giving you that command. And you're saying that, yes, if I buy it, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to reach satisfaction. Or by watching this cricket match, I'm going to be complete. Something is missing in me. And if I watch the match and we will beat, was it Britain?
New Zealand.
New Zealand, we are going to be better. Okay. So my desire is telling me that because human is in need, I am missing a piece as if. This is why I eat, I drink, or drinking coffee I enjoy, right? Something is missing in me and I'm trying to complete that. If I take answering that need as my answer, I am taking my desires as my God. But what does it say? Do you think that أم تحسبون أن أكثرهم يسمعون أو يعقلون? As if now it's rhetorical asking the prophet, do you think these guys are listening or thinking? So this is, why do I bring up that verse? In the previous one, it was Sami'na wa Ata'na, and generally it's understood as if some command enters from it and it makes you move. There's no processing in between, right? But messenger here is talking to people, trying to deliver them a message, and the Creator says most of those will not listen and contemplate about it. So this is why Sami'na wa Ata'na in the verse, in the first case, as it is now being clarified in here, it doesn't simply mean hear and then just start acting. You don't need to question, you don't need to understand anything about that. We are human folks. We are not robots. And we do have questions. We would like to understand. And that's why repetitively in many places, Quran would say, don't you think? Don't you contemplate? This is a part of human being a human. And you would have tons of questions, more so today than ever, because we are not living in an environment in which the norms are set by your Muslim understanding. And you cannot simply go and say, well, I mean, this is in our culture. Islam in this case is not a simple culture, because culture sounds like this is Pakistani way of things, this is Egyptian way of doing things, this is Turkish way of doing things. And they are equally valid or invalid. It's just style, right? If I am taking it as such, then I'm having some issues, because especially in such a multicultural environment as it is today, eventually it would happen that, well, I mean, let me try this other way. At the end of the day, as long as you're a good person, it's okay. I mean, the important thing is being a good person would be an answer. But what does it mean really to be a good person? Yes.
So can we put it like this, that we've been giving the, like, for example, if you do something, you know, if it's like, if it is right or wrong, you've been given by the Creator to know what is going to be right or wrong. And then the choice that you make, it either leaves you peaceful or it either leaves you hollow, for example, if you make that choice. So can we take it that way?
Making a choice, explain it a little more.
For the desires one,
Okay.
for example, there is a desire that you want, for example, but then there is, so go a little bit off of it, but for example, there is, you can take into Qadr, for example, the all-knowing one knows perfectly. So then I can also ask this question, like, what is the need for my desire? Like, why do I desire anything? But then can I answer this as like, I've been taught what is right and what is wrong. And by making those distinctions, it either makes me like more peaceful or it leaves me hollow. And through those desires that I can get closer to the Creator.
Yes, I mean, you are given those desires as well. So But what am I going to do with those desires? So shall I take them? Shall I blindly follow those desires? Or shall I also question commands of my desires as well? Because you have the urge to eat food. You have the urge to do things. And sometimes the creator says, no, don't do that. Sometimes he says, okay, now you can do it. But those desires, like you don't have control over the desires. They are in there. So what do you do with them? Yes, I will then need to ask the question, why am I having those desires in the first place? And I'll try to make sense of them so that I utilize them properly. Because I can blindly follow those desires. And in today's khutbah, this is what I was also trying to get to. Your desires will tell you to be consume, consume, consume. And that would make you become greedy, because each and every time you consume something, you get a glimpse of a satisfaction, but that satisfaction disappears immediately. How do you overcome that? Next time you increase the dose. Isn't this how it goes? And you become more and more of a consuming person. But that consumerism comes up with an outcome, which is what? You become greedy. And that greed, like today, since you guys don't have much of a power, you feel like you wouldn't kill anyone, right? So if you were to climb those ladders, I mean, just look at today, your attitude of consumerism. And if the chance was given to you, would you, and it becomes a matter of killing someone, that person is between you and what you want to reach, would you not kill? It's easy to criticize when we don't have those power or that money or anything. Like I can easily criticize Jeff Bezos' lifestyle right now because I'm already living in a small budget. And then I say, well, okay, it's okay to live in a 2-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia, right? But if I were having a couple million or however many billion, I don't know, dollars, would I still consider what would be my norm for being wasteful or not wasteful? This is why we should ask ourselves today, am I following my desire? What is wasteful to me today? Like maybe not 11th purse, but a second purse to buy, or wasting my time on it's okay just to get another, I don't know, pair of shoes or pair of clothes or whatever. Because what is at the gist of the matter here? I am seeking for satisfaction by having more. For Jeff Bezos, it might be having another $1 billion house. For me, it might be having another pair of shoes. The nature of the two are the same. The magnitude is different. Still, I am following the command of my desires. So, and this is an obstacle between me and listening the command or the invitation, the message. Because the message of the creator will come, and still I will need to evaluate it. So to wrap it up, Sami'na wa ata'na should not be just taken as, oh, I am seeing this guy for the first time, he steps in, and I say, brother, Sami'na wa ata'na, God says so, so you must obey. This never had been the case. Message comes, the person evaluates the message, arrives to a conclusion, then would be seeing commands of the creator as a meaningful command, and then lovingly would say, I obey this. Otherwise, it's not like a brainless command is coming without any thought, I'll follow what that is saying. It's not human. Expecting such a thing from a human wouldn't be, I wouldn't expect the creator of this intellect and this humanity with all its desires to put such a expectation from human. I would say that, well, my maker, it's not how you designed this human being. So Quran is ready for you to ask those questions. This is why it is there. If you didn't have any question, there wouldn't be any guidance. Just the mere existence of guidance is meaning that creator says, I know you would have questions. This is how I created you. And here are my answers to the questions that I put in your head. So read it, understand it, evaluate it. Once you confirm, you will get into action. Okay? in these discussions, I'm trying to excite a little bit of questioning in there, because generally, unfortunately, when it comes to religion, we are becoming dumb, or we are expected to become dumb. But this expectation is not from Quran. This expectation could be coming from our eroded culture, I would say. This is not how it's supposed to be. But over time, people are becoming, I put it within quotation, religious. This is not how religiosity should have been in the first place. But unfortunately, oh, I am super pious, I'm not even asking a question, became the norm. I mean, what sort of a piety is that? Because as if becoming inhuman to ask a question. I mean, I'm becoming like a cattle. See the verse here? It's saying they are like cattle. Not listening, not thinking is being mentioned in this verse as a cattle. For a cattle, how does it sound like for a cow? Like if you say cow, then you can scare the cow and they go in a certain direction. For a cow, it's just sound, right? You just make a sound. Cow doesn't understand what you do. Even if you just show the best of the pictures to a cow, what would be their response? Moo, right? And if you show them the ugliest of the pictures, still, moo doesn't make any difference. And cows are even the least responsive animals. They are not as responsive as, I don't know, a sparrow, for example, right? The verse is inviting me not to be like a cow. So if you are being invited not to question in the name of religion, by the pretext of sami'na wa ata'na, I would suggest saying that, are you sure this is what the verse is talking about? Or at least for your own world. I mean, you don't need to challenge somebody else out there. But in your own world, challenge yourself, or at least question yourself. How serious do you take your religion? Which is equal to, how serious do you take life? What I mean by that, let me open it up a little bit. How serious do you take your college education? If money is coming from somewhere, I mean, you don't have to pay back for it. Your father's already filthy rich and he's paying for the school. And after you go, I mean, already your father's business is waiting you to be there. You will just party in the school, right? The school only becomes the paper you get at the end. So you wouldn't care about school per se, right? For you, school is just 4 years, 5 years of hanging out. So you wouldn't take school serious in this case. But if you have to pay back the loan, and after you graduate, there's no job guarantee for you, then you will take your school much more serious, because every course is part of the $60,000 you pay for school. So it's money that's just evaporating every day that you miss a class or you miss an assignment. So if you are in that mindset, you will take school serious. How about your life? What is your life? Are you taking your life as the first student who just takes the school as 5 years of partying? Is life 60 years of partying? Or is it this, you are concerned about, where am I going? What's going to happen afterwards? What does every moment mean? And how do I make use of that? Because you are being given $24,000, if you like, every day. That life you have is such a capital, and you are being given that. Like, alhamdulillah, you all here are healthy. You are being given those 24 goals for every hour. You can take every hour as somebody is investing that money on you. And this is coming to an end. It's like a leaky bucket. Every moment it's going away, right? What do you do with that? This becomes a human question. How do you increase this capital? And it's just going away every moment. How can you increase that investment? If you take your life serious, then you would say, you should be like, still you guys are students. But if you start saving a little bit of money in the States, you will start asking the question, what do I do with this money? Because inflation is just eroding my money, right? What shall I do? Shall I put it into a 401k or do this or do that? Shall I go to, I don't know, some company, semiconductor company seems to be making better. You see, I know about it, right? So you start questioning all this stuff. How about your capital of life? What do you do with that? am I wasting it mindlessly? Right? So this is why Quran is something to be taken so serious, because this is the expert's idea about how to increase that capital of life that is being given to me. How can I do a better transaction? And Allah uses that word as well. إِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَى مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَمْوَالَهُمْ بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. So indeed, Allah is making this transaction with the believer for their self and their property in exchange of Jannah. Allah is using that metaphor of making a transaction with you. How serious do I take that? So may Allah make us take that serious, at least as serious as how we take our schoolwork, because schoolwork is going to finish, life will finish, but the real thing that stays is, what am I going to do with this life? Giver of that life should tell me what to do with that, and his speech must click with me. If it is superfluous, unacceptable, I would say this is not speech of my creator. If my maker expects absurd things from me, or somebody comes and says, this is what your creator asks from you, and if it's absurd, I would say this cannot be my maker's word. So be courageous to say that, and I guarantee you, Quran will give you the proper answers. To the extent that I have seen it, Quran is giving satisfying answers to all your human questions. I'm not trying to philosophize the religion or anything of that sort. You are having questions. How do I know? I am having questions. And Quran is answering my questions. So it will answer your questions. So just be courageous to be exploring that. And if somebody comes and says, no, you don't question, Sami'na wa ata'na, I do not expect my creator to say so. Okay, there was a comment. Okay, Zarar says there's a similar verse. Have you seen, O Prophet, those who have taken their own desires as their God, and so Allah left them to stray knowingly, sealed their hearing and hearts, and placed a cover on their sight? Who then can guide them after Allah? Will you all not then be mindful? And Zara's comment is, I think reading it as taking your desires as God makes more sense. Yeah, so I think this was in response to what you were saying. Yes, what do you guys think? Any comments, any questions, please?
Yes,
Okay.
but I also want to point out that the verse could also mean, like, from the believer's perspective, that obeying should not be contingent on understanding. As long as you are sure that the message is coming from God, you can't use it as an excuse, that, oh, I didn't obey because I didn't really agree with what you were saying, or I didn't understand it. No, as long as you are sure that it is coming from God, you don't need to understand it, but you are welcome to and encouraged to try and understand.
That one, let's then open up a small parenthesis about that. Or it's in general, a very good question to ask. Do's and don'ts of religion, right? What is the point of do's and don'ts of religion? Let's say God tells me that you can eat cow, but you cannot eat pork, right? What does it mean to understand the purpose behind this message? Is the message here would be, well, scientifically, pork meat is unhealthy, but cow meat is healthy. Oh, now I understood, then I will obey. Is this what we mean by understanding? Or another aspect of command is, and I think this applies to, and enough at least to start following it, to say that the bare minimum message of not eating pork versus eating cow means that I do not own pork, I do not own cow. And the owner of it says, you can use this, you cannot use this. And me respecting this choice of him is contingent upon what? I confirm and I am convinced that I am owner of neither one, and neither I am owner of myself, and my owner says, you can take this, you cannot take this. And as a show of my respect and conviction about this, I am eating this, I am not eating this. There could be further wisdom in that, why he said it like this, but it's called a wisdom. It's not the reason of it, right? So, illah, the actual reason for me to choose this and not to choose this is because this is a sign for myself to say that, yes, by this actually I am learning or I am training myself to say that I am not the owner and he is the owner. So at the bare minimum, do's and don'ts of the religion are for me to practice for myself that La ilaha illallah, meaning he is the creator, he is the owner, not me and not the cow. It's not like, oh, we are going to do something together with that person is okay, I am okay, so who the heck the rest of the people to argue against it? But the creator comes and says, no, you can do this, you cannot do that. It's not about the action itself, it's about the owner. The owner says, you can do it, you cannot do it, and showing a respect to that. So this is why understanding meaning does not simply mean, oh, let's make a scientific experiment about why pork. It's just a detail. So in this sense, yes, you don't, maybe you should have expanded a little more what we mean by understanding, but there are different levels of understanding, which perfectly okay for me to say that, yeah, if then my maker says, don't do this, I won't, because I understand and acknowledge that he is the owner. Yes, Ibrahim.
Two things. One, relating to what you said about understanding the reason for something. And if you don't understand it, at least at the very minimum, if you know that truly Allah said do this, don't do that, or describe something to be in a certain way, that for the ways, if you get to understand it later on, finally, like Prophet Musa, when Philip was doing all those things, he kept on asking human nature so he understands why. But Philip told him to wait, that you won't understand. But he still took it, he didn't force him to stop.
Yeah.
Until later on when Philip explained and then he's like, oh, okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
He didn't deny it though, but he still wanted to know the reason behind it.
Yes, actually, this is a very beautiful example, so that it gets into the microphone as well. So the example you are giving was Musa alayhi salam and the companion that he traveled with, and the companion was doing three things, and he said to Musa, don't ask me questions, but Musa kept asking. And eventually the truth behind what happened was revealed to him later on, right? And in that story, that companion is mentioned and as a person from whom our knowledge is given to, right? So what does this signify for us? In this life, things would happen to you and you will have those questions. And those questions would be there. Even a prophet would ask them, right? It's okay to ask those questions, but the answers would not be immediately clear to you. And where is that person? What does the person to whom our knowledge is given, what does this signify? That signifies that the Creator says, I have a message behind things that is not revealed to you yet, but eventually I will show it to you. It actually signifies qadar, right? And the Creator says, eventually I will teach it to you. And it's okay for you to ask the question right now, but if you do not see the answer immediately, you're not rebelling. So Musa alayhi salam's position in there is to say that, okay, I am delaying understanding the message. And this is how we sometimes do even when I'm teaching a class. I just pose a question or give a wrong answer. Students objects about it. I say, wait, that's a good point. And I'm coming to it in 5 slides, right? In life, the Creator also does the same thing. Gives you a wrong answer sometimes or something that's wrong to you in the first. And you make an objection. The Creator says, very good. You can count the point, wait for 5 slides. And I'm going to unreveal why I made it apparently false. When I reveal the truth, you will now make better sense of it. What's the second thing?
The second thing, you mentioned how you might not understand the reason behind it, but as long as you know that this is from my Creator and my Creator knows best, so therefore I'll do it. Can't that be tied to something now? As in understanding in two sides of understanding now. Understanding the reason or the logic behind it versus understanding the logic, but acknowledging or believing that this is from Allah, Allah knows best. So if I get to know the reason, fine. If I don't, I'll still go.
Right, that's right. But I just want to add a certain thing because there's so much cultural luggage added behind this. Still, if it is building on top of your conviction, So this is why I would like to emphasize Iman as a conviction. If you are certain that you have an owner, because in this nowadays, like in this current culture, how much are you sure that you have an owner? Or do you feel like you're a byproduct of evolution? Or you just happen to be? Or you are here because genetically this is what you are and whatever. All these are really orthogonal to God being your owner. Because in general, our hearts or our cultural mindset says, oh yeah, of course God created me. But if you question honestly that person, the idea is, yeah, of course, like I came out to be, as if I happened by myself, right? That's why I say, to the extent that there's a conviction that I have a maker and I am a guest here, then if the owner of the place comes and says, you're not going to sit here, I would say, okay, where shall I sit? Oh, sit here. Okay, I'll sit there. I would say that, right? But if I take this person as just a random guy comes in and says, right now, let's say somebody comes in and says, okay, guys, we are getting out of here. What would you say? Who are you? Why you can't? But if then they take out a badge and says, I'm in here in the name of university, who is owning here? I would say, of course, then they will, okay, let's leave, right? Maybe I wouldn't even ask why in this case, because the owner of the place said, go out, and we go out. That's fine, right? But it's based upon, again, a conviction, which is the owner of the place has the right to let me in, let me out. It's their discretion to say. So I have a conviction again. So this is why here does not simply mean that specific case, what does it mean? Explain me and then I will obey. Not only that, I mean, still you can ask that question and answer that, but the real reason we will leave here is because the owner of the place said us to leave out, and I have a firm conviction that the owner of this place has the right about how to use this place. And to show my respect to that conviction, I will leave, right? So that's an important distinction, because generally, nowadays, when it comes to find a answer, we have this tendency to say that, oh, there's a scientific evidence that pork meat is not good. Or socially, let's say Islam says you're not going to have a relationship out of marriage. We say, oh yeah, socially, it's going to cause this and this and that. When I was in university in Turkey, which is supposedly a Muslim country, right? In the university, many of our friends were saying that, well, at the time of Prophet, pregnancies were not preventable. This is why he said, don't do that. Now we can prevent pregnancy, right? Then, I mean, he wouldn't say not to do such a thing. Sounds very logical if you take it as such, right? So this is why the answer to why question is way different. At the basis is this that conviction. This is the main thing. Do I think that there's an owner of this existence, my intellect, my body, my joys and everything? If yes, then if the owner of this house, which is my body, says that, well, you can use it for that purpose, you cannot use it for that purpose, I cannot argue, first of all. The owner says so. If I am convinced that I'm not the owner, I will follow. But still, I can say, very good point, but also can you explain me why you're asking for such? Further benefits would be there in the answer to that, right? But it would be an added value, not the actual reason for me to follow it. So this is why every command of Islam has a wisdom in it, but those wisdoms are secondary. The first thing is to be convinced that who is my owner in the first place? Or do I have an owner? Because in this society nowadays, freedom means you are your own owner. Any other comments? Shall we conclude it? We are on time. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت